want to welcome you to our walk through Romans. This is Friday, and we are working our way through the book of Romans. Now, let me just say this. You might be thinking, well, you know what? This is not very interesting. This does not pertain to my life. And let me differ with you. This is the Word of God. This is there for a purpose, and it's not just there for the Jewish people, even though that's what we've been talking about this week. It's there for all of us. We ended yesterday's by saying that the people that don't do what they say, that they actually cause the Gentiles or the unbelievers to blaspheme God. How many of you know that's important for a Christian, for a Gentile Christian and a Jewish Christian, both? It's important that we understand that we need to do what we say. Now today we're in verse number 25, chapter 2, verse number 25 of the book of Romans. And this is what it says. For indeed circumcision is of value if you practice the law. There's that word if again. What's the Apostle Paul saying? He's saying, you know what? Circumcision for the Jewish people is of benefit. It's of value to you. It's of a profit or of an increase to you. That's what the Greek word means here. Circumcision was the sign of a covenant relationship with God. But if all you have is a sign, it's not going to do any good. That's what the Apostle Paul is saying. He says, if indeed circumcision is of value, if you practice the law. In other words, if you do what the law says, then circumcision is of value. But how many of you realize that there's no one that has kept the law completely except for Jesus? So what's Paul saying? Is circumcision of value to you Jewish people? Only if you've kept the law. If you've not kept the law, there is no value in this outward sign of a covenant relationship with God. And then he goes on in verse number 25 and he says, but if you are a transgressor of the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. Whoa. Now that's a powerful, powerful statement made to the Jewish people. If you are a transgressor of the law, what does it mean to be a transgressor of the law? A transgressor of the law is, the word transgressions actually means someone who goes against or who goes beyond the boundaries. If you walk up to a person's house and it says no trespassing, and then you go beyond that boundary, you know what you are? You are a transgressor of that law. You're a transgressor of that person's desire that no one comes beyond that or goes beyond that boundary. And so the Apostle Paul says, but if you are a transgressor of the law, in other words, if you sin, if you go beyond what the law says, then he says, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. Now the Jewish people, they believed that circumcision was a sign of a covenant relationship with God. But what's the Apostle Paul saying to these Jewish people? That if you break the law, if you go beyond the law, if you transgress the law, then you're uncircumcised. And to the Jewish person, that was like a slap in the face. What do you mean I'm uncircumcised? I'm circumcised. I'm Jewish. You see, we've spent this whole week talking about the Jewish pride and how that pride needed to be conquered or needed to be destroyed by the Apostle Paul so that the Jewish people could enter into salvation by grace through faith. And so the Apostle Paul says, you know what, if you're a transgressor of the law, if you've gone beyond the law, and by the way, it didn't mean just one law, it meant any of the law. If you've broken any of the law, then your relationship with God does not exist. And again, he's talking not about the Jewish people as a whole. He's talking about the individual Jewish person. Verse number 26. So if uncircumcised man keeps the requirements of the law, will not his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? Again, the Apostle Paul is asking a question. If an uncircumcised man who doesn't have the law, in other words, if a Gentile who doesn't have the law keeps the law, does that mean that his uncircumcision will be regarded as circumcision? In other words, that even though doesn't have an outward sign of a relationship with God, because he keeps the law, will that be a sign that he's a relationship with God? And the answer to that question is no. No. It is not through circumcision that a man has a relationship with God. It's not through a physical sign of circumcision that a man has a relationship with God. It's through faith in what you believe. It's through faith in what Jesus did for you on the cross. That's how you have a relationship with God. Verse number 27. He who is physically uncircumcised, if he keeps the law, will he not judge you, though having the letter of the law and the circumcision are transgressors of the law? What's he saying? He's saying if a man who didn't have the law, but yet he kept the law, if a man who was uncircumcised, in other words, a Gentile, if he kept the law, is he going to judge you who are circumcised and don't keep the law? Well, first of all, God's the judge, not man. But yet an uncircumcised person, a person that is deemed to be unclean and has no relationship, and yet he keeps the law. He looks at the Jewish people who transgress the law, and he looks at them in a way that he judges them. We're going to continue next week. We're going to wrap up chapter 2 and go on into chapter 3. I hope that you join us as we walk through the book of Romans.